going to do an on the cheap tutorial, and what I'm doing is a place card tutorial that you can use, an easy place card tutorial that you can use for Thanksgiving, but the same thing can be applied to any situation where you want to use place cards. I don't know, fancy dinners and stuff. We're talking like fall type themes because that's what's coming up next week if you live in America. What I'm using for it is a cheap set of watercolors. Now it's like the cheapy Target brand watercolors. I bought like 5 of them when they were on clearance after school supplies for like 50 cents each. So I'm sure their regular cost is super cheap too. And I'm even going to use the brush that comes in the cheap watercolors. The things I need to make this thing. Cheap watercolors, cheap watercolor brush that goes with watercolors. I have 2 things of water. One is clean water and one's gonna be dirty water. I just have a regular ass pencil. I've got like a Pigma Micron pen because that's what I have, but any kind of black pen, a flare would work fine. Like a felt tip type black pen, Sharpie, whatevs. That'll work fine for writing and everything, but you want to have it like maybe a slightly finer point. That's why I'm using a Micron 03 for this. This is just from a pack of watercolor paper that I got from Michael's. It was inexpensive. I don't remember what the brand is. It's one of the cheap brands, and I just bought it when like paper pads were on sale. I just stocked up on them. So it's just an 8.5 by 11 piece of inexpensive watercolor paper. And then the final thing I'm using, which is not required but helpful, is a paper trimmer. You know, you don't have to use this. You can just use scissors, whatever, but I have it, so I'm going to use it. And the reason I like it for this is not only does it have the cutting blade, but it also has the scoring blade, and I'm going to be making use out of that. My handy plastic ruler. Okay, so from this piece of paper, you're going to be able to get 4 place cards. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to divide the paper in half. I'm going to flip it over to the side I'm not going to be painting on because that makes sense. So I'm going to divide the paper in half lengthwise, or the short end wise, and that's 4 1/4 to get you to half of the 8.5 by 11. So I am going to divide this puppy in half, and then I'm also going to divide it in half the other direction. And that winds up being 5 1/2. But I'm actually going to divide it up into quarters. So we have 5 1/2 inches long. That's what she said. And then to get that, it would be 2 3/4 inch on one side, and then 8 1/4 on the other side. So that divides it into quarters, the long direction. Love talking about length and inches. It just, all of the that's what she said jokes are basically like tumbling through my head at this moment. It's like a bounteous, like if we're talking about doing like place cards for Thanksgiving, then this is like a cornucopia of that's what she said jokes are just bubbling under the surface. I'm going to make the point that the way I'm going to show you to do these place cards is going to be super simple. You can always make your place cards a lot fancier than this. I just like this simple look of it. So that's the direction we're going. This is the absolute, like, I have no idea what I'm doing kind of place card situation. So what you're going to do is use your cutter to cut the halfway mark on both sides. The long way, like this halfway mark, you're also going to divide the other way. Okay, and so that should leave you with 4 of these quadrants with that line down the middle. So what you're going to do is you're going to line on your cutter if you have a scorer. If you don't, you can use the edge of your blade to score it. The point of scoring it is to put the dent in it to make it so that it'll bend like nice and neat. So if you see here, you can see that there's like the divot. It's hard to see with the camera, but that means that you can fold it and it folds like nice and neat despite the thickness of the paper. What you're going to do is you're going to take your pencil and you're going to loosely sketch in a few things. Now what I've done is like 3 leaves and an acorn. And so I'm going to zoom this in so you can kind of see how I'm sketching these in. I'm actually flipping this thing upside down. So this will be the side where the name is, but I'm flipping it upside down because it's easier for me to sketch in the leaves. So one way I like to sketch in leaves is to draw like a line And you have that line, and then you just sort of bounce some curves along the line. I know it's hard to see, but that's how I do it. And then another way to do a leaf is to kind of do a heart, but just make it a little elongated. So you see how that's a heart, but it got the tail kind of runs off. Try doing that. And then for an acorn, we'll do an acorn here. You just draw like a half kind of circle and then drop down like an oval underneath it. I'll just do probably another one of those line. You can't see because of the fucking shadows. Sorry, lighting is weird. And then I'm just going to bounce around it again. So just very simple leaves. What we're going to do is, and this is where you need to remember to keep your water separate from each other. You have one water that's going to be clean and one water that's going to be dirty. Okay, so take the water that's going to be dirty and go start getting your, I'm going to move this where you can see it, getting your like watercolors woken up, the ones that you're going to use. Now the ones that I used for this was from this cheapy little palette was yellow, orange, red, green, and brown. For leaves, those colors will work out okay. You can add the black in, you can mix them in the lid of the palette if you want to, but I'm going super simple. Like I said, if you want to fancy this up a little bit more, if you have some experience with watercolors, go for it. But I'm doing this for someone who has zero experience and zero money. So what you do is take the watercolor with the brush with the clean water, and you're going to drop water onto the areas where the leaves are. You start with one, you want to do this one at a time. Now you can't see what I'm doing perfectly because of the light, but basically this whole leaf is filled up with water. So then I'm going to take a color. I'm going to start with yellow for this puppy. I'm going to grab some yellow, and then I'm just going to touch it down into the water. And notice that the paint wants to go where the water is, right? That's the way watercolors work. The paint likes to go where the water is. So go and add another color on top. Just kind of dot it in, maybe down the line a little in the middle. You know, you're just adding some color. It's not going to be perfect. Whoops, that was my clean water. My bad. It's not going to be perfect. You can go in and add your last cut, like some red if you want to. Just add some color to the leaf. It's not going to be perfect, but once you have some color added for that leaf, give your brush a little rinse, and then do the same thing with the next. That did not rinse very well. Well, whatever. No one said I was perfect. Add some water, but now you can see the water being added to that, right? So you add water to your next leaf, and this time I think I'm going to add a little green. It's okay if it looks a little dirty. These leaves are going to look like they're dying anyway. So then maybe a little brown. We'll do a little brown to brown up the leaf. And then maybe a little orange. And so as you work, and then for the acorn, I'll do like, you can try and do, like what I would do is add brown to the top, and it's going to go to the whole thing, but like really add some brown to the top half of the acorn, and then maybe go and add a little yellow or something to the bottom part of the acorn to make it a little lighter. And it's going to be really like generic and look like it doesn't have a lot like of detail, and that's cool. You're just trying to get some cool colors down. If it's kind of sloppy, doesn't really matter. And the best part is of doing this, I'm going to do some orange here, I think. Yeah. And some red. The coolest part about doing this is that no two place cards are going to be exactly the same. You should just add a little brown to this puppy. You know, and this is something you can even do with kids if you wanted to. It just takes some time. If you've done this, you've got some colors put down, just go and do a whole bunch of them until they dry. So I have a place card here that I had actually done before, and these already dried. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Pigma Micron, and I'm going to go to these leaves, and I'm going to loosely sketch in some detail. I'm not going to be super accurate. I'm not even going to try and get my pen to show up very well. I'm going to let, like a lot of watercolor papers have that rough surface. I'm going to let that rough surface happen. because that scribbly kind of scratchy look. And I might even add a little stem onto the end of it. I'm not going to try and stay within the lines. I'm just going to try and put the general vicinity of these leaves in. And then see how I just put some bare scratching of like stem and like the lines going down the center. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be absolutely accurate. Same with this acorn. I'm kind of just sketching in the general idea of it, maybe adding a little bit of scribbly lines to it to just make it look a little more like an acorn. And then you have your leaves. And see, neither of these look exactly the same. All you have to do is pick your favorite style of lettering and put the person's name on it. Now, if you're just doing a first name, doing something like this with cursive, and I can link the Thickening the Downstroke Llama's Love Lettering if you need ideas for that. I'll just link the whole Llama's Love Lettering playlist. You can pick the one you want. But since I did cursive for this puppy, for this one I'm going to do something different. I will do my sister's name. And I'm going to do this style. And if you're wondering how to do this, like I said, I linked the playlist. You can go check out various episodes. And season 2 of Llama's Love Lettering is on its way, so there will be more lettering to choose from. But for right now, you can go check and see, or just use whatever you feel comfortable with. You know, I'm just doing this because I love the look of this. And there is my place card. And then all you have to do is, see, there's the score. Did I score this? I don't know if I scored this. Whoops. Well, then I'll show an alternate scoring method. This is a paper folder and score that I got from Michael's. It's like a sharp. So you just take this like knife, like you're stabbing into it, and follow. Whoops. This is why I do things that have straight lines. But you give yourself a score, and then you can fold. And then once you're folded, you can even take this thing and just run it like that to make the fold nice and crisp. Now you've got some place cards. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to see other versions, other holidays of this, tell me down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you next time.